You've had a wonderful life of public service, and in addition to that, people who complain about people in public service say, what do they know about the world at large? They've never run a business, and they've never done this and that, and vice versa, but you've done the whole gamut and spent a lifetime at it. Youngest person in the House of Commons at the time?
At the time, yes, when I was first elected in 1949. That's a long time ago.
Long time ago. When you were a kid, you were in your 20s.
And 25, yes.
Yeah.
And then still the youngest when I was appointed to the cabinet 8 years later. In Louis Saint-Laurent's cabinet, I'm the only surviving member of the government, so that's the reason I'm the senior Privy Councillor for Canada, and it was an honor to serve with him, even briefly.
What's so amazing is just the sheer amount through your experience of history you've had, including the history that we're going to be talking about, that to me it seems ludicrous we're even having these conversations still. Like, gee, should this be disclosed? It seems like we're 10 or 15, 20 years should be past that debate, but we're still in the midst of it.
At least. 20,
at least. Yeah. And especially considering a document Paula passed on to me that was authored by Einstein and Oppenheimer saying, okay, we're already aware we're being visited, and now we need to look at strategies as to how we engage. That was 1947. Well, let's talk about your personal journey in this. So when you were Canadian's National Defence Minister, you weren't so aware of that phenomenon at the time.
No, I was not. This was a long time ago, and
what years are we talking about now?
1963 to 67.
Yes, okay. So talk about what you were peripherally aware of.
Well, I got sighting reports. That was about as close as I got to the UFO phenomenon at the time. And these came on my desk, and they merely told me that about 80% of all the sightings were natural phenomena, and the others weren't. And they were marked unexplained.
Let's go to when you did start engaging with the subject of unidentified flying objects.
Well, that was only about 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then only as a sidebar, because this young man from Ottawa, Pierre Junot, started sending me information about it. I said, Pierre, I haven't got time to look at it. He said, that's okay, just put it on a shelf and keep it for a rainy day. And then he persuaded me to watch an ABC special put together by the late Peter Jennings of Ottawa.
Yes.
And here were all of these former United States Air Force pilots and commercial pilots and policemen and air traffic controllers saying, we have seen UFOs. I said, why would they go on air and say that they had seen a UFO if they hadn't? I mean, what's in it for them to lie? And I said, they're not lying, really. I think they're telling the truth. But still, it was just a show, and I was interested in it, but that was it. Well, then Pierre sent me a book called The Day After Roswell, and I said, this should be interesting reading for the summertime when I do my casual reading. And so when summertime came, I looked for it, couldn't find it, and had to settle for The Life of Pi, which was very entertaining. But
maybe you weren't ready to drop down the rabbit hole just yet.
No, not quite. So the following year, when I was looking for another book, there was The After Roswell staring me right in the face. So I took it and started to read it, and I was only partway through it when I thought to myself, this is the real thing. This isn't fiction. Mm-hmm. This makes sense to me because the names of the generals and the bases, the Air Force bases, by then, because it had become the Air Force after the Second World War, mm-hmm. I recognized. And so the way it sort of worked out, my nephew Philip came along and said, what are you reading? I told him. He said, I'm a skeptic. I said, okay. That's fair enough. Free country, more or less. And
yeah, more or less.
More or less. Certainly less now, that's for sure. And so he went home. And a couple of days later, he phoned and said, I called the general and told him what you were reading. This is a retired United States Air Force.
How did he have access to calling the general?
Because they had both been working in the aviation industry.
Okay.
And that's how he knew him. And
When we say the general, we're not talking about which general
no,
specifically.
we're not being
Okay,
specific
all
on
right.
that.
I mean, in the day after Roswell, there were a couple of generals involved that Philip Corso talks
Oh,
about.
yes,
who was the
General
author.
Twining and others.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but
Trudeau.
this is
Mhm.
not the general.
Mhm.
And so he said every word is true and more. He said, where can I get a copy of the book? So I told him. And it just happened, by then I had finished the book, and I was really convinced that I had a duty to go public and say there are some issues here that should be in the public domain. The American people have the right to know what's going on. They have the right to know what they've been financing all these years. They have the right to know what the situation is. And not only the American people, but the people of the world, because we're all in this together. And ultimately, what the U.S. does will affect the people of the world from one side right around to the other. I had been invited by a couple of ufologists to speak in Toronto. I really had absolutely no thought of acceding to their request, because I'm not a ufologist and it didn't make any sense to me. But after reading the book, I said, maybe I should accept.
Once you made that bold decision, what happened to your life?
Well, it changed dramatically in a sense, because the information started flowing in about UFOs and the ET presence and so on from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I got dozens and dozens of documents. Some of them were pretty thin gruel, but some of them were classified, and some of them were very, very interesting and had a lot of information in them. And I got a lot of books, excellent books from reputable ufologists, and I read them all.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I started getting requests to meet with people that knew something about it. And the first one was Dr. Stephen Greer,
Mm-hmm.
who, in my opinion, is one of the icons of the ufology business.
I would agree. I was at Disclosure
You know,
at the National Press Club back then.
right? You know,
It was an amazing effort. No one else could have pulled it together.
absolutely. And he's, you know, I just rate him so highly, and he's become a friend. And Emily, his wife, too, and I'm very concerned about her sometimes. And so we had a 3-hour briefing on the waterfront in Toronto, and that was just the first of many briefings by ufologists
Mm-hmm.
all over the country. And people were interested in seeing me. Shirley MacLaine, for example, tracked me down, and when she was in Toronto, said, let's have dinner. And just happened that my wife was going to Montreal that night, and so I asked her, she said, go ahead. So I did, and we had a splendid time. And then a few days later, she phoned and invited us both to dinner, and we had some pretty good discussions about what she knew. About,
In ufology.
yeah,
Okay.
and she knows quite a lot, more, I think, than perhaps she's ever disclosed. But
Mhm.
the deal was that I wouldn't talk about it except in general terms.
Right.
And so that was one. And then Edgar Mitchell
Yes.
was coming to town, and he was introduced by Mike Bird, actually. They were friends at the time, and it was very interesting. And Edgar playing a little coy and talking about Roswell, and he said the alleged crash. And I said, come on, Edgar.
Quit saying alleged,
Yes,
Edgar. Come on.
His face turned all red, you know, because he knew that was not really appropriate to the occasion. And then his next question was, well, how many species do you think that there are? And I said, I don't know. I suppose somewhere between 2 and 12. And he said, yes, that's what I think, too. But this was in the days when we didn't have any idea of how many there really were.
Right.
The numbers have gone up astronomically since
Yes.
then, as you know. So this established a relationship which continues on until the present. And this sort of thing has gone on, and I have met so many of the really dedicated people in the ufology business.
There are many people that are deeply entrenched even now in the UFO community who will deny the existence of many aspects of it because they're concerned for their own reputations, or even worse, for their own book sales. You know, and this is really irritating. It's kind of a fractured community, and you're coming in as, in the true spirit, as a purist, to simply forward information because of your own positions in life you've had access to at high levels. That makes a big difference.
Yes,
you can
and I
really
think
bridge the
my
message.
former job as Minister of National Defense assists my credibility too, because
Absolutely.
people know that I had no particular reason to stretch the truth.
Absolutely,
to
and put your
find
neck out on
Yeah,
the limb.
right.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk for a little bit, because so many people, I think, were brought into the fold by Day After Roswell. I mean, that really was the book that, back when I read it in, I think, 2001, really convinced me to start taking all of the phenomena more seriously as well. And so for those who have not read the book, which will be a large percentage of the people watching, can you give us some of the main capsules of information that Philip Corso brought forward?
Well, I think the most important thing, he was one of the first major whistleblowers.
Mm-hmm.
And he stuck his neck out, way out. And I think it was because he too felt that the truth should be out there.
And we can set him up. He was head of the Foreign Technologies Department.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, he claimed to have had exposure to the bodies at an earlier stage.
Yes.
In another incarnation. But then I think it was about 10 years later when he became in
Yes.
charge of foreign technology.
Early 60s, yeah.
And what he describes is how he contrived to take the stuff from his filing cabinet, as he calls his junk box or whatever, and insert it into industry.
And let's talk about what some of those technologies were.
Without
Yeah.
saying where it came from.
Yeah.
But I mean, the people he was giving it to, many of them would be wise enough, A, not to ask where it came from,
Right?
and B, to know that it was beyond the range of technology that they were familiar with anywhere here on Earth, and that they could maybe develop it into something that would be beneficial to them,
Mm-hmm.
both in their careers and in their business relations.
Mm-hmm.
So he did this in a number of cases and spent most of his time at it, I guess.
So what we're talking about is technology that had been recovered from the Roswell crash and sequestered by the military,
That's
different
correct.
departments.
And it's likely that it wasn't unique, and the Air Force and at least the Air Force and the Navy were probably doing the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the way the story is set up, there was a bit of a grab right after the crash where
Yeah.
each of them showed up and spirited away different pieces and parts.
Yeah, and the Navy had a
Yeah.
ship that they had recovered before, and so there was enough of the junk, as Corso would call it,
Right.
to spread around to quite a few different industries and to get them working on some pretty interesting
Well,
stuff.
we're looking at the birth of transistors. We're talking about highly positioned companies, large companies of the
Right.
day, Bell Labs, Rockwell, and on
Yeah.
and on, aerospace industry. So we're talking about the beginning of transistors, laser technology, fiber optics,
Fiber optics, yeah. Very
Kevlar for
Yeah.
bulletproof,
Yeah.
vests for cops down the road. But those things didn't exist prior to this. So these contracts were all parted out, and like you say, they had the discernment to not ask where these pieces came from, and they were just released as inventions from the industry to the public. No one was the wiser.
Exactly, and this was I think the main source of the beneficial part of the thing to the public, as opposed to the military side, which you can
Yes.
argue may or may not have been beneficial in the long run.
Right.
So here we got the fallout in these areas, and this is the plus side. We probably didn't get as much as we should have in some other areas like agriculture and medicine, but this is another story, and this is something that we have to keep worrying about in the future.
And now, this is really what propelled you along, your own path of inquiry, it sounds to me, was you were looking at how could we possibly benefit from this. It had already been known since the 40s that we were collaborating, right?
Right.
And so how can we benefit from technologies that are more advanced than our own?
Yes, but I was concerned about the military aspects,
That's true, yes.
because what were the United States Air Force doing? Were they shooting at these people? Answer, yes. All of them? I don't know. But certainly there were a lot of instances when fighter planes were launched and followed them and tried to shoot at them. They did shoot at them, found in many cases that they had protective measures that kept them from being shot down at that stage. But it was also my concern about where this would lead, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
That I was concerned about, still am, and wanted to know more about, thought the public should know more about.
And yet the public knows very little to
Very
this
little.
day still. I mean, it's shocking, if not criminal, that has been kept from our view this many years later. And so let's talk about the mechanism through which this happened. Let's talk about the intelligence communities that were given birth to, OSS, NSA, CIA, all of it, how this started coming about, and what impact that had at large on society once they decided that this had to be kept secret.
Yes, somebody made the decision that this information should be kept from the public at all cost. And the cost has been very great in some cases because they have, in effect, taken the law into their own hands. They have become an integral part of the cabal, as I call it, and they just ignore ordinary laws in the sense that if somebody talks too much, they rough them up, threaten,
Or worse.
Threaten to take away their pensions,
Mm-hmm.
and in some cases kill them,
Right.
and make this very obvious as a deterrent. And so this is not the rule of law. This is not the constitutional approach to things. This is an off-law situation and represents what has become known as the shadow government or the alternative government of the United States, which President Clinton made very clear he didn't control, nor have many
Yes,
other
in
presidents.
his famous statement, there is a government that exists in the shadows, and I have no control over
Yeah,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Claire McClendon, I think, asked him the question directly of why he didn't, in effect, let the people know what was going on, and that was his defense. An amazing statement, very true.
Yes.
And so they have been operating separately, and I think their main connection to the legitimate government is the receipt of funds, that they have financial backing.
Massive amounts of off-the-books money,
Massive.
which also interfaces with drug cartels, the whole thing. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
a dark morass
Right.
of illegal behaviors and secrecy.
Quite so.
Hmm. And, at disclosure, I think one of the things to me, because I was there with Stephen Greer's group, was so compelling is to watch behind the scenes as these, especially the men who'd been in military their entire lives, were coming forward and breaking their security oaths. And as they did this, I saw men in tears after the disclosure and even before the actual presentation at the National Press Club. And I thought, if that doesn't tell you everything, that these people have been carrying this burden for so long, yet are so afraid, even now, after all these years of the repercussions, and still came forward. I think that spoke to me as loudly as the testimony itself.
Yes. And more recently, Stephen, what's the last name?
Greer?
No,
No, it's Stephen Bassett.
that's Stephen Bassett.
Right. The other Stephen.
Right,
Yeah.
the other Stephen. The 40 people that he put together
Yes.
in 2013 the consensus was that all of this had nothing to do with national security. It was greed and power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in terms of the secrecy itself, it was so insidious. I remember, now this was in the 80s as a young news anchor. We had Reuters and other reports coming across the wire from around the world of UFO sightings where a local police force had seen it and all that.
Right.
It was absolutely verboten for me as an anchor to put that on the air, even if I said, come on guys, let's put this on. Not allowed. And in fact, at disclosure, one of the people in the room who was there for, I think they were the local ABC affiliate in DC, when someone in the audience said, well, if this is real, how come we don't hear about it on television? And he stood up and said the same thing. He said, we know about it, we're not allowed. The media, there's a lockdown on that subject. That Peter Jennings had the force of will, maybe they just thought it would be a sweeps, big numbers, thing, but that he had the force of will to be able to get that out to the point where it was credible enough that even you and others at that level said, I think we have to examine the phenomenon.
Right.
Was absolutely a feat.
Yeah, it's really frightening that the press is so controlled.
It is.
So controlled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah. Okay, so now one of the areas I wanted to hop forward to, you had spoken in one of your talks about Serpo, and I have interviewed Len Caston. And I wanted to ask you, and we'll just lay a little framework for Serpo, because that was a direct knocked-on effect from Roswell, right? With the EBEs, the biological entities that were captured. One of them did live, the others died, right?
Right.
And so one of the little beings lived, and there was dialogue that occurred between them and our military, or secret shadow military factions.
I think the story I read, and it may or may not be accurate, EB number 1 suggested an exchange.
Yeah.
And President John Kennedy decided that was okay. And it all started there, and of course the secrecy which surrounded it was unequaled.
It was fascinating what they did to these guys. I mean, here they put an ad in the paper, and these poor unsuspecting souls, I don't know how it was worded, showed up, and wow, they dropped off everything. That was it, off radar.
Yeah.
They didn't exist any longer once they said yes to this project.
And the price they paid.
Oh my God.
I read some of the things like being buried underground for several days to see how claustrophobic
Right.
you were, and I felt awful just reading about it.
So once they agreed to do this project or experiment, they wanted people who were single, had no children, and
Right.
ideally were orphaned themselves.
Yeah.
So essentially, once they went missing, nobody would miss them or be
Right.
looking for them.
Yeah.
They were washed. Their identity was completely washed.
Correct.
They were sequestered in a federal prison. Was it Leavenworth? Federal prison. For a year or two prior to taking off on this thing, so they couldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, this was intense. And so ultimately the day came when they, according to Anonymous, and this of course is the thing, that who can talk about this publicly. So the person that's credited with this was involved in the project, but they're called Anonymous.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how people try to discredit it.
Yeah, and I think this is the way the whole system has worked, though, that when the powers that be want information in the public hands, that they leak it, and then it's deniable.
Yes.
But as far as I'm concerned, Anonymous was doing what he was told to do by the Defense Intelligence Agency, because the DIA was established, as you know, by McNamara and Kennedy, because Kennedy was worried about the CIA.
Yes.
And they wanted something that was more transparent. And they are, and they're showing here 25 years after, which is a long time to wait. They're saying this is what happened and this is how it happened. And these are some of the things that you should know about it.
Well, and it's phenomenal in nature. There's nothing else like it that has been admitted to.
Absolutely.
And so 12 individuals pick the story up from there.
Yeah, but the interesting thing to me is that even though this is in the public domain now, nobody's talking about it.
That's what I'm saying. Nobody knows about it. And if you were to bring it up, they'd say, oh, come on, that's sci-fi.
Exactly. Somebody asked me yesterday, do you believe that? I said,
Yeah.
of course I believe it, yeah. And, well, the 12 individuals, and ultimately they were taken aboard an alien ship, a scout car, which was loaded with, I think, 47 tons of goodies of all kinds, from weapons to little radio sets to hundreds of
Massive
records.
cargo.
All kinds of stuff. And then the scout car took it up to the mothership.
Oh, and guns, just in case they needed to defend
they had
themselves.
guns, yeah, which they never used. But,
Right.
Maybe, I don't know if they did kill the snake or not, whether they used it.
I don't remember if they killed the snake. They may have killed the snake.
They upset.
That was an odd snake. Yeah.
So all of this stuff, and was loaded aboard the mothership, and away they went finally. And of course, the first little while when they were going through the time warp, they were all sick.
Yes.
And after they got through that and in the wormhole, they were okay. And 10 months later, they had gone 38 million light years distance in 10 months, which is absolutely incredible. And then when
incomprehensible without understanding that kind of physics.
Absolutely, because and even one of my sons, bright person, if I may say so, just says, Einstein said, and that's it as far as he's concerned. And my reaction is, well, you don't know how much. This is my famous line from Light at the End of the Tunnel. I didn't know how much I didn't know because I didn't know how much there was to know.
Right.
And it's as true today as it was then.
Right.
It's just like a scroll, a Jewish scroll, and it comes out and then it goes back after the service. But this is a scroll that goes out both ways, and it keeps going on and on and on, not back, but to infinity.
Yes.
So you can never comprehend all of these things. It's just a question of how far you can go in one lifetime and how much information you can absorb.
Well, this was Planet Serpo, the book that was ultimately put out by Len Kasten. And for anybody that wants to go into the nitty-gritty of it, I did an hour or two with him in a conversation a few months ago.
I'm glad you did that, because there's so much information in that book. And other related subjects, including the influence of the reptilians through the secret organizations, establishing Hitler, and affecting the whole Nazi movement, and
which affects our economy to this day, and politics in the world. That's a second conversation. And you know what? We've been chatting about 40 minutes already. And we're barely into the subject of ufology. But what I would like, because people have a lot of places to go for this research, including your own work and the books you've written, can you just kind of give us a statement of urgency, clarity, whatever you wish, regarding the need for us to start embracing this before we talk about money?
Okay. Well, I think we have to somehow persuade our governments to level with us. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I think we have to keep worrying away at it and get the information out. And people have to get it in small chunks, because if it all was spilled in one day, first of all, it'd be impossible to do, even 1 week or 1 month, because there's too much. But if it comes out in small pieces, people will be able to accommodate to it, and then to look at some of the alternatives. And the alternatives, I think, really affect the future of humankind. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what the cabal and the alternate government has in store for us. we suspect, and with good reason, that they're planning to set up a world government which is a dictatorship, largely for their own benefit and at the expense of all of the rest of us. Interestingly enough, it is the same kind of situation that they have in Planet Serpo. And so these
Yes.
are the reasons why I think we have to get into this information. Because are we going to continue just going along an ignorant path until it's too late to save our species? There are actually some people involved in this prospect who believe that they could start a thermonuclear war, first strike, and wipe out the military potential of both China and Russia and survive. This is absolute, total insanity.
It is, and I think maybe if there's a saving grace to understanding that we are galactic in nature, some of these attempts have been, to one degree or another, made in the past, and it hasn't been allowed.
You mean by the extraterrestrials?
Yes.
Yes. But these are the things we must know
Exactly.
so that we know how to react.
It's kind of comforting in a way to know
Yeah,
if we're not
well-
smart enough to look out for ourselves, at least someone else is helping us avoid that kind of disaster.
Yeah, unless our guys are working for the wrong
Yeah.
side, in
Yeah,
which
yeah,
case,
exactly.
heaven help us, eh?
Yeah,
So this-
heaven help us.
Yeah,
But
so-
you know, you were talking about this controlled information, bits at a time. It has been happening through Hollywood, right? Steven Spielberg.
Oh, yes.
And here we have Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We had the show Taken. We have E.T. These were all put out there to help us as a species become comfortable with the notion that we're
Right,
not alone.
exactly. But ultimately, if we want to save our planet, if we want to save our species,
Mhm.
we have to change. And especially since World War II, we have become so self-centered, so grasping, so determined, especially with the military-industrial complex and the cabal, to start one war after another in order to require...
Line their pockets.
Yeah, to line their pockets at the expense of the people. And this is wrong, wrong, wrong. And after the Cold War ended, we should have had a real peace dividend. We should have had them divert billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from defense expenditures to build a better world, a peaceful world where ordinary people of all shades and religions, regardless of who they were, had enough to eat and enough to water to drink and shirt on their back and little basic education, little basic health care, and so on. That's what we should have done. The peace dividend was called.
Yes.
And some of us hoped and prayed it would happen. But it didn't happen. We went the wrong way, we made the wrong decision, and so you have this incredible expenditure on space technology. But somehow we've got to change our priorities, or we could wind up losing our whole species. And unfortunately, some of the ETs don't care that much because it's the planet they're really concerned about.
True.
That they're more concerned about having it survive. And if you destroy the surface of the Earth, some of them would survive because a lot of them live underground or underwater anyway. But we'd be gone. The only thing we can do, and I've invented some of my speeches, as you know, with saying the missing link is a spiritual link.
Absolutely.
And we have,
And morality.
yeah, we have to sublimate our egos and change our priorities and say it's important to treat other people as we would wish to be treated, which we don't now. We have these people saying, we have to keep minimum wages down. And I've read a piece in the paper about some The state government's going to take away from the municipalities the right to set minimum wages,
Yeah.
so that they wouldn't raise them. What kind of an approach is that? What kind of a life is that?
Very
That's-
callous and uncaring.
Absolutely.
And so I'm with you.
Yeah.
A reestablishment of some kind of larger morality
Absolutely.
with a spiritual basis of some kind.
And deference to the Creator
Mhm.
and the creation. And if we did that, there would be hope.
On that note, thank you very much, Paul.
It's been my pleasure.